The Decorah Vikings got the season started in style last Friday night with a 32-6 win over the walk-on Indians. Head coach Pat Trewin joining us. And Coach, we saw the result. We've seen the statistics as you broke down the game further on film. What were your main takeaways from last Friday?
Well, there were many good things. We certainly improved over a year ago with many of the guys back, and that's what you'd expect. I think the blocking was better. We had some positions where we won the blocking on a fairly consistent basis. We had some really great efforts on runs by Dakota Johnson. And then you got to be proud of the defense where they threw a lot of things at us with their formations and motion and schemes. And Coach Tuggan really had them prepared, and the other coaches too that work on the defensive side of the ball a lot. But we're pleased with that. Now the other side is, there's still things to work on. We're not polished in every way. There were a couple times where we probably made a mistake in blocking that we could have done this one a little differently. But in a first game against a rivalry team, we're very pleased with the result.
And you mentioned the defense, especially giving props to the run game, giving up just 2.6 yards a carry. They toted it 34 times and had less than 100 yards. What made that run defense especially work last Friday?
Well, it starts with being very physical up front. We were much more physical than we had been, really all last year. And, we've got a bunch of those guys, if not all those guys back. And that was a concentration in the off season to get stronger, to get faster, to get bigger. And you start there. And you've got to be able to do that. Walk-on's young, we have to say that they don't have nearly as many seniors as they did last year. So we'd hope for those kinds of efforts and, expectations to come through. And they're a well-coached ball club. That's the good side of it. We were able to beat a very well-coached ball club. And then we got the next one that's coming up in a team that's always well-coached in West Delaware.
And you talk about that physicality. Obviously, there's ways to improve that with the weight room and the off-season strength and conditioning program. But how much of that is just a mindset that you need to instill?
A lot of it is a mindset, and some of that just comes from work too. When you work hard, your expectations grow too. Weight room, summer work, early season work. Just being physical on bags and really pushing them hard. We probably worked harder in this early season and harder in the summer than we had in many, many, many years. So it was, we knew we needed to make a big step up. And then the mentality often comes from the hard work. And you don't want to be denied when you've worked that hard.
And you mentioned another home game this week, West Delaware coming to town. They're a team that scored a lot of points last Friday night, but they also gave up a lot of points in their season opener against Western Dubuque. What were your takeaways watching that film?
Well, they're a very dangerous team when it comes to their offense. Is just they scheme you and they formation you, and then they're going to run power football at you. They have a quarterback who's returning. And he's thrown for a good number of yards last year, but they really want to line it up and get him to run the ball and get their running back to run the ball and find different ways to do that. So, and these guys are bigger. They're bigger than walk-on, and that can be harder to move them sometimes. It can be harder to get off the blocks sometimes. So the big play will be important again, not giving up the big play. We had some touchdown saving tackles when the team got through last week, and this week we're going to try to still keep the big play from happening the best we can. But last year we couldn't get off the blocks, and we've focused on that, and we really feel like it certainly was the worst looking game that we had against West Delaware, and we our guys remember it, and they don't want that to happen again. And so that mindset, that determination, I believe is going to be there. I can't see why you wouldn't show up after what we did last year against them.
And when you talk about getting off of blocks from a technique standpoint, how do you do that?
Well, it always starts with the first punch, and really getting after the guy and stymieing his block by getting after him with the hands and the chest, the physicality. And then it's really working to try to make sure he's not getting a hold of you too. So we've got to use some angles too, and many times we can go right at a guy, but if a guy's bigger than you and you're going at him, and they use some technique where they're grabbing a hold of jersey or grabbing a hold of shoulder pads and it's not being called, you've got to find ways to fight those arms and fight those hands. And that's, you work your hand technique versus that person's hand technique too. And that's hard to simulate because we don't teach our guys to really grab on the outsides of shoulder pads. And so in practice, it's hard to simulate fighting off of that block. But that's what we got to be able to do. So we got to mix it up in the defensive front. We're going to have to use some angles where we're trying to hit some gaps too. Instead of going straight into them, we're going to try and attack at some angles at times.
All right, Coach, congrats on the week 1 victory. Hopefully you can keep things rolling this Friday night. Keep your guys healthy. We wish you best of luck.
Thank you.
Pat Trewin, head coach of the Decorah Vikings and Hawks Friday night at Viking Stadium.